I like spending in-game currency. In fact, I kind of have an addiction to spending it, especially when a gacha system is involved. Take games like Honkai Impact, for example. I absolutely love the story and thoroughly enjoy the gameplay, but the most enjoyable factor about it for me is getting the exact character I want without any issues. The dopamine you receive after obtaining the character that you want after spending a minimal amount of gems it's truly an ethereal and ephemeral joy. However, you'll probably find that certain characters are more valuable than others, most of that value coming from just how good that character is in general. More often than not, you'll end up rolling for one character that's good and find that you want another character coming up right after that. This, of course, isn't an issue so long as you have the gems to compensate and also get that character. Now, what happens when you don't have the gems to obtain the character that you want? Well, it's simple. You suffer. Alright, let's get right into the thick of it. I'm sure you've already seen many investment guides for games like Genshin and Honkai. It only makes sense to have one for Star Rail, no? Obviously, I'm going to cover ways to obtain and save Stellar Jade as optimally as possible. I'm probably going to make some mistakes along the way, but it's better to have a flawed plan that helps rather than no plan at all, so yeah. What we'll be covering in the guide aside from obtaining Stellar Jade is as follows. What characters to consider rolling for if you're a meta slave, what to do with Stellar Jade aside from using it as banner currency, if late game banners are worth rolling on, what characters will assist most in late game including 4 stars, and lastly what's worth spending real life currency on, which that's really going to be up to your own interpretation, but hey. The video will be separated into chapters, so if you want to skip to a specific part, feel free to do so. Also, I'm probably not going to be able to talk properly and kind of stutter throughout the video, because one, for some reason I have trouble pronouncing words that start with an S and T, and secondly, my jaw is kind of out of place right now, so yeah. Stellar Jade is easily obtainable towards the start and middle of the game as per most Hoyoverse games with their currency. You get plenty of Stellar Jade and tickets from daily logins, events, and quests that all are seemingly easy to achieve. The best way to get the most possible Stellar Jade in the shortest amount of time, well, would be to get farther enough into the Bellabog storyline day 1 and unlock daily missions as fast as humanly possible. That way you're able to gain a decent amount of Stellar Jade without having to worry about losing any in the process. As for how you go about quests, that's mainly dependent on your playstyle. I'd personally recommend taking your time with each quest, but still trying to finish as many as possible within the first week of release. The reasoning behind this is due to certain in-game features like Simulated Universe and Amber Hall having weekly resets that greatly vary in difficulty based on your level, which, if you do more quests to get higher levels, so on and so forth. With the more quests you complete, the more Stellar Jade and Trailblaze XP you gain, leading from one thing to another and hence granting you more possibilities to gain even more currency. With all of that in mind, you simply have to play through the main story in moderation and take care to not let possible chances slip away so that you gain the maximum value out of every possible scenario. As for how to ration Stellar Jade, avoid spending all of it instantly towards the start of the game and give yourself at least a 3-day spending grace period unless there's, for some reason, a limited banner that's ending the day of your initial login, which, in that case, go ahead. The grace period will allow you to collect your thoughts and amass a decent amount of Stellar Jade before deciding how you will spend it and what you will spend it on. Most players will give in to temptations and roll for Sealy nigh instantly, however it's most likely that both Scylla and Jingyuan, who are running 1.0, will be given a rerun much earlier just due to how popular they are, and, more importantly, how broken they are. It's not necessarily wrong to spend all of your Stellar Jade in one go, just make sure you're considering the banners that follow and the value of each character and what they mean to you. For context, I'll be using the term Break Driver beyond this point when referring to a character that excels in applying Weakness Break to an enemy. This segment will also act as a tier list of sorts, so if you want to just see the character placements, skip to the shown time. Bronya is probably the best support considering that both their skill and ultimate buffs your DPS's damage as well as granting them an extra turn. Personally, I place them decently high in priority and I'd recommend rolling for them. Welt is a debuffer that applies slow as well as being a great break driver with both single target and AoE capabilities, making him a good sub DPS. He's a decent starter 5-star and provides plenty of late game usage. Gepard is in my opinion the best shielder currently, providing a party-wide shield with similar scalings to March 7th's shield, making him exceedingly good in pretty much every scenario. His element is ice as well, making him a good free support and hence making him higher priority on this list than other 5-stars. Bailu is the only healer in 1.0 aside from Natasha, making her an exclusive class as well as an extremely useful 5-star. She has the ability to extend your allies' free trial of life by cancelling the subscription to death, or put more simply, she revives your allies upon their HP reaching 0. Her healing as well as her invigoration buff are great in pretty much every scenario, with the only downside being the possibility of overheal. Yeah, she's a great starter option. Kimiko is a good AoE character with a decent follow-up as well as performing well as a break driver. While she's rather lackluster in single target scenarios, she's not meant to be used as a main DPS, but rather a sub DPS, so she performs decently well in her preferred category. Yanxing is second to only Sealy in terms of single target damage, with a skill and passive that are great at applying freeze, as well as an ultimate that increases his crit value greatly. He's good against bosses, although he's not great in group scenarios. And lastly, there's Clara. There really isn't much for me to say here, so just read the synopsis and get it over with. That covers all of the standard 5-stars, so we can move on to the limited 5-stars now. Silver Wolf is the second best support to Bronya in terms of team value. She has the ability to apply a new weakness to enemies as well as lowering their overall elemental resistance. Compiled with their many dangerous debuffs and quantum element, Silver Wolf is a force to be reckoned with, and hence I wholeheartedly would recommend getting them. Sele somehow manages to turn a turn-based game like Honkai Star Rail into a hack and slash. Using her special ability called Murder, she manages to obtain quite a few extra turns, as well as many different damage buffs. Her scalings are absurd, and she's likely the best single target DPS in the entire game, so she'll carry you through pretty much everything without issue. Blade uses an ancient Chinese technique taught to only a few select individuals, that technique being hitting really fucking hard. With arguably one of the best enhanced skills in the entire game as well as the most SP efficient kit, Blade is absolutely absurd and stupidly fun to play. I'll personally be making an extremely in-depth guide about his kit, so look forward to that in the near future. Jing Yuan is the CEO of Erudition for a reason, having the best AoE kit in the entire game. His skill, ultimate, and talent have absurdly high scalings, and he's without a doubt the best DPS for clearing large groups of enemies. He'll carry you through pretty much the entirety of the early game, as well as the simulated universe. Luoka is an attack scaling healer who defines the I'm a healer but image pretty much perfectly. With a skill and passive that rivals Yaoshi's healing, you'd think he'd run a full healing kit. But of course not, no, nothing ever goes as planned in this accursed world. His ultimate, which is named Death Wish by the way, is an AoE ultimate that you could shove on any DPS and no one would even bat an eye. His kit especially benefits Blade, so if you plan on rolling for him, I 100% recommend getting Luoka as well. Kafka is probably the most normal out of all of the limited 5-stars, and they're still an insane 5-star, which honestly says a lot about the current meta. Running a hybrid damage over time and AoE kit, she's especially good in lightning teams. There currently isn't much to write home about since we didn't get to use her in CBT3 with Ting Yun, but judging by how everything's going right now, she's on a fast track to becoming a top tier. At the moment, however, she only really places as decent on the 5-star spectrum, so I'll place them at least above Clara. With that, we have covered all of the limited and standard 5-stars, meaning we can get right into the next segment. Just for context, this is like the 5th rewrite and re-recording of this segment, so hopefully you didn't skip it. As for the final results of the tier list, here they are. Enjoy this indirect Star Rail tier list for me. I'll also shove the 4-stars on just for fun so you can get an idea of my current opinions. With that in mind, that concludes the character segment.
No. The fuck is wrong with you? You're a bad person. Did your father ever tell you that they love you? Why would you ever use Stellar Jade to get more Trailblaze powder? Are you fucking stupid, you absolute mongrel? Why the fuck would you ever think that's a good idea? Why don't you go eat some fucking crayons, you stupid?
It obviously depends on the character you plan on using them on. Lycons are heavily reliant on the type of character that you plan to put them on, like maybe putting Luoka's Lycon on Natasha. Yes, it would benefit Natasha, but not anywhere near as much as it would benefit Luoka, considering how their healing scales off of different things. The same can be applied to pretty much every other 5-star Lycon. It just depends on whether or not you're planning on putting them on the character it was intended for. Lycon banners are much more lenient than weapon banners in Genshin, with only one 50-50 loss required to get a confirmed Lycon, as well as the chances being 75-25 instead of a normal 50-50. Overall, you'll likely still be at a loss if you roll on the Lycon banner, but it's much more worthwhile than if you were to do it in a game like Genshin, purely because of Lycons having just that much more value for a much cheaper price. If you want to roll on a Lycon banner after giving it consideration, go ahead. They're worth the value so long as you have the character that it's intended for. Obviously, you want to pick out your DPS, and from what I've shown before in the 5-star meta section, you probably already have a good idea of who you want to pick for your main. However, we shouldn't entirely phase out 4-stars from this process, since they'll always prove useful in some way or shape. Characters like Arlong, Danheng, Qingque, and Susheng all provide absurdly good DPS capabilities, both in the early and late game. My personal favorite DPS is obviously the almighty Dark Pitchhook the Great. Slayer of Leviathans, Lord of the Moles, and Emanator of Destruction. Sorry, got a bit lost in thought there. Basically, what I'm saying is there's plenty of 4-star DPS options to choose from. The Trailblazer is also an absurdly good DPS in the early game, having good capabilities and usages throughout pretty much all Belobog. What you should really be worrying about is who your supports will be. Good 4-star supports are listed as follows. Pella is a good break driver who excels in defense, shred, and buff removal. Asta is an extremely good break driver with a bounce skill, as well as increasing their party's speed and attack and providing lots of SP value. March 7th is currently the only single target shielder in the game, and they provide extreme defense as well as they're a good break driver. As well as that, they're absurdly good in freeze comps and provide counter mechanics, which is provided by their shield. Tingyun is the third best support and the best free-to-play support without a doubt, having the ability to grant your DPS major damage buffs as well as increased energy. She's especially good in any lightning team, considering that she benefits lightning damage majorly. As well as supports, there's also sub-DPSs, who mainly consist of characters with AoE ultimates like Sampo, Serval, and Herda, who all provide great AoE support in many different forms of application in their respective elements. The only healer in the 4-star category as of 1.0 is Natasha, who is not exceedingly good at healing, considering their low scalings. However, given the ability to remove debuffs with their first trace, she's extremely useful in most scenarios and provides plenty of reasons to use her in the early game. It's not like you can't really use her anyway, since she's the only free-to-play friendly healer currently, so good luck trying to beat the game without using a healer. This is the question most free-to-plays, dolphins, and whales dread every single day, with some of their very existences relying on the sole fact that maybe, just maybe, it might be worth it. Which, honestly, it kind of is. I'm not just saying that spending money on Hoyoverse games is worth it, because it usually never is, but in the case that you want to spend money, things like the Battle Pass provide much greater value overall than they do in most Hoyoverse properties. Not only does the Battle Pass provide stupidly good light cones that are usable on pretty much every type of character, but it also gives you an item that lets you pick the main stat of the relic or planar ornament of your choice. Sure, it costs money, but it gives you something that most Genshin players can't even fathom. The main stat you actually want on the piece you actually want it on. Yes, you can't choose the substats, but does that really matter? Well, yes, it does, but having the main stat you want is honestly a much better perk than literally anything Genshin provides, so I'll take it. Aside from the Battle Pass, there aren't too many things I'd say are worth it, with most of the material packages only really finding usage from whales and people who are just desperate for resources. The real thing you wanted to know about was whether or not spending money to obtain Stellar Jade is viable, which, yes, it is. From what we know, the Oneidic shards you can buy from the store value in at the same price as Genesis crystals from Genshin Impact, which is an unfortunate similarity, but hey, it's the same creator. What are you gonna do about it? Overall, it's never worth it to try and spend money unless you genuinely feel the need to, in which case, still don't, but if you're fine with spending that money and you don't lose anything from it, then feel free. Star Isle is very lenient with spendings and overall has some worthwhile deals to provide plenty of good things down the line. Alright, that covers about everything I wanted to discuss about investment and how you should go about it. You probably didn't gain much information from this video since it only really informed you which characters are worth rolling for and which ones aren't, but overall I'd say that's actually decently good to know, even if it's kind of outdated and just overall not really worth your time, so I'm kind of sorry about that. Then again though, most of the information that you learned from this game is learned on your own and it can't exactly be taught to you normally, but I can at least tell you that just try to unlock daily missions and simulated universe by day 1, and if you can't do that, then you can't do that. Simple as that. I could probably pamper you and give you a bit more information about what's going on, but personally, I like watching people suffer their own consequences, so I'm not gonna do that. If you think you have any questions that I can answer, then I'll answer them to the best of my ability, and if I can't answer them, oh well. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the video, and I yet again apologize for my lackluster upload schedule. By that I mean not uploading for like 2 weeks straight, because Star Isle's coming out and I really don't know what to do. But yeah, yet again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and that is all from me today, so yeah. May this journey lead us starward, and that is all from me. Well, bye.